So before we get into Descartes, I want to say a little bit about what knowledge is, or to look at this question, what is knowledge? What is it to know something? And I think we need to do this because I think it'll help set up what Descartes is trying to do. Because I think if you just go into Descartes and you look at it, it can seem a little weird, a little arbitrary, what he's doing in some of the moves he makes. But I do think a lot of the things Descartes does and says, even though it might seem a little weird, I think really builds on ordinary thoughts about what knowledge is and requires. So I want to say a little bit more about that, and I think that'll give us a good background to get into Descartes. All right, so clearly there are norms about claiming to know something. You can be criticized. What I mean by norms is that you're open to criticism if you say you know something and you don't meet certain conditions, right? Claims to know something are open to criticism, and they're more open to criticism than sort of weaker claims that mean something similar, right? If I say to you, well, you ask me what your grade is, I probably wouldn't be very sloppy with this, and I'm like, well, I think you have a B, right? I'd have to look at my grade book, but off the top of the head, I think you have a B. Turns out your average is a C. Hopefully your average is higher than that, right? But, you'd have a lot more issue with me if instead of saying, I think, I said, well, I know it's a B, right? And a lot of times if you say you think or believe something, I really don't like the very one or the other cut and dried fact or opinion distinction, right? But I do think a lot of times when we just say, well, I believe or I think something, it is siding more with what a lot of times people will just call opinion, right? This is just what I think about it, right? But when you say you know something, then you're opening yourself up for more criticism. You have to do more in the way of accounting, and I think you're more criticizable, you're more blameworthy if you're sloppy about it, right? So saying that you know something is open to criticism. It does have standards, and it seems to require a lot more than just, say, believing something or thinking something, right? If you say you know something, and I ask you why, and you say, well, I just have a hunch, that really doesn't cut it, right? You really don't know. Whereas if you say, well, I believe it, and I ask why, and you say, well, I have a hunch, that might not be the greatest reasons for believing, right? But I wouldn't criticize you for saying that in the way that, I would for saying you know it when you don't have any more than a hunch, right? All right, so if there are standards for claiming that that you need certain things to claim that you know something, what are those standards? What do you need to justifiably claim to know something, to make some claim to knowledge? There's a huge tradition in philosophy going all the way back to Plato, who's really probably, in a lot of ways, the first real philosopher in the Western tradition, of saying that knowledge is justified true belief. Now, I'm not getting to get into the whole history of that, but the basic idea here is, that there's two big parts to knowledge. A, you have to get it right, and that you have to get it right for good reasons. That getting it right can't just be a lucky guess, a matter of luck, right? So the most basic thing for something to be knowledge, it actually has to be true, right? You can't claim to know, you can claim to know something that's false, but if it's false, you're obviously wrong, right? You can only know something if it's actually true. If it's not true, you might think you know, but you don't. Well, what else do you need? Well, for one thing, you need a pretty high level of confidence, right? If you're going to say that you know something, that you have knowledge, you need to be pretty confident in it yourself. If, you take your car into a mechanic and he says, well, yeah, I know this will fix it. I know this is the problem, and you ask the mechanic, it's like, well, give me a number. How probable, how likely do you think it is that this is the problem and that what you're saying will fix it? And he's like, yeah, I'm 55% that it's the problem, and if it is the problem, I'm 70% that it'll fix it, right? You wouldn't say that he knows anything, right? He has you need more than 55 or 60% to know something, right? My dog recently had a cough. We were trying to figure out what it was. And our vets are good, cautious, responsible people. They never said, oh, I know exactly what this is. It's like, well, I think it's this. We'll try this, right? The vet's like, well, I think it's just an allergy. I'm 60% on that. If he said he knew it was an allergy and it turned out not to be, it did turn out to be an allergy, but if he said he knew it was, that would be sloppy. You need a lot more confidence than that to say you know something, right? If I try to say, well, before the election, I'm like, well, I know Joe Biden will win. And you say, well, how likely do you think it is? And I'm like, yeah, 60%, 51%, right? That wouldn't be enough. You need a very high level of confidence to really justifiably make claims to know something. Or think of a complicated math equation, right? You are not at all sure of the answer. You put it down, but you think it's a coin flip whether you got it right. You don't know that that's the answer even if you got it right because you lacked this level of confidence you need to really know something, right? Well, how high does this level of confidence have to be? Absolute certainty will definitely be enough to satisfy this, but is something very high but, not quite certainty, is that enough? That is a question we will get into. But beyond confidence or even certainty, you need support. To really know something, to be justified in making a claim to know something, you need good justification. Being confident is not enough to make you really know something, right? Well, obviously, plenty of people are very confident about things that turn out to be wrong, right? But look, there might be other cases where somebody's confident and they get lucky. But I think we'd hesitate to call it knowledge. Let me give you guys an example. I had a friend who worked for a private school on the south side of Chicago, right? South side of Chicago, all the kids at this private school were huge White Sox fans, right? Lots of people on the south side of Chicago are. The private school was actually in the neighborhood, or one of the neighborhoods close to Comiskey or US Cellular, or whatever they're calling it now, where the White Sox play, right? And so these kids had this just unshakable faith in the Chicago White Sox, right? This baseball team, right? And my friend would tell me, every year his students would be like, oh, coach, I think the White Sox are going to be good this year, right? He was not a coach. It should maybe tell you something about the school that even though he coached nothing, all the students insisted on calling him coach, right? But anyway, every year his students would be like, the White Sox are going to be great. And pretty much every year, the White Sox would be terrible. And these students never had good reason for thinking the White Sox are going to be good, right? They would say, oh, they're going to be good. They're going to go to the playoffs. They got Konerko, right? Paul Konerko was a batter. He's actually a pretty good batter, right? Actually a really good batter, right? But if you know anything about baseball, just having one good, really good hitter on your team is not enough to be a good baseball team, right? The White Sox did not have good pitching. They did not have other good, hitters. Most years they would stink. So every year these kids thought the White Sox were going to be great. Every year they were absolutely sure of that. Every year they had bad reasons. And finally, lo and behold, one year the White Sox were actually a really good team. They won the World Series. But look, I think you say to yourself, well, but even that year, did these kids really know? Let's imagine it's one kid, and every year he says the White Sox are going to be great, and they're not. Every year he has not any good reasons for thinking that, right? Just has this faith in the White Sox. One year he's finally right about that, right? He just gets lucky. But I think we'd say even that one year, he didn't really know they would be good, right? He just got lucky. Every year he thinks they're going to be good, and one year they actually are, right? A broken watch is right twice a day, as they say, right? Kids who have an unshaking faith in a usually mediocre baseball team being incredible will be right one year out of like 20 or 30, right? Just because they're super confident and just because they got lucky one year and happened to know, I don't think we'd say they actually know. They just got lucky, right? Or, imagine this. Imagine you're doing a really complicated math problem and you have absolutely no idea. And you just, all right, I'll put something down. I'll put an answer down because I don't know, but I'll put something down. And let's just assume it's multiple choice. D just floats to your head and you think, I don't know why, but I just have this feeling, this strong absolute feeling it's D, right? You bubble in D, you get your grade back, lo and behold, you got it right. You didn't know that D was the answer. No matter how much you might have become confident about that, you just got lucky, right? So you need some justification for what you believe over and above being confident in it and over and above it being true. It cannot just be luck that you get it right. It has to be something over and above getting it right, and confidence and luck is not enough, right? One thing I think we should put some emphasis on here is a big part of justification is that you have to rule out possibilities that would mean you don't know what you claim to. Right? If you live with roommates and you think one of your roommates ate your leftover food, before you go accusing him, you should rule out the other roommates. You should know they didn't do it, right? There are other possibilities. You should rule out those possibilities before you claim to know that he did it, right? Now, if he's the only one if everybody else respects people's property and he's the only one who ever eats people's food, then maybe you don't need to rule the other people out. But if your roommates are all equally bad about not respecting other people's property rights, they still have leftover food, before you go accusing any one person, you need to rule the other people out, right? If you are putting an answer on a homework assignment, if there's a bunch of options, even though one might seem right, if you want to be really careful, you should think and say, well, are the others, can I rule them out, right? Or, again, think of a police investigation. Before they go accusing any one person, they have to rule out other suspects. You know, before you say Joe did it, if Dave might have done it, you have to rule Dave out, right? So a big part of justification is you have to rule out other possibilities that would mean you don't know what you claim to know. This one is going to be hugely important for Descartes, as we will see. That's one of the basic ideas of Descartes' argument. You know, we need more than confidence, and we need more than being right. We need justification, and part of justification is ruling out possibilities that would show we don't know what we claim to know. Descartes will try to show we cannot do that. There is a possibility, or maybe more than one possibility, that would show we don't know any of the things we claim to know, and we can't rule it out. That means we don't have knowledge. Descartes will also say, look, once you think about this, you shouldn't have a whole lot of confidence either, but the main thing is this justification bit he thinks is going to fail. Or at least it seems like it will fail given what we see in the meditation, right? He thinks he has a way out of it, but as I've said before, I'm not sure his way out of it works as well as his raising the problem.